What's up, Instagram? How's everybody doing? Welcome to Backyard Trash Talk, our very first podcast show. What are you gonna call
Whatever
this,
you
John?
want it to be.
Whatever.
We don't really care about your opinions. We're just doing it for us. Just give us likes because we actually do care about your opinions. So we're excited to get started. Just a couple guys with a couple takes, right?
Yeah, John coming in real hot off the top. He's we're just gonna have fun. We're just gonna go out here, just talk about sports, try to relate to, I guess, the common man out there. But yeah, John, you feeling good about tonight?
Dude, feeling so good. We're gonna cover some hot topics in the NFL. Maybe give you a little inside perspective and some other things. So we're excited. Chris, why don't you start us off, man?
All right, I'm batting lead off tonight. All right, let's see here. I got the news report. All right, so first topic, Arizona, number 1 pick. Cardinals up atop. They got a new coach, potentially a new quarterback. First pick, John, who are you taking?
Well, if I have to stay there, I'm going to go with the unpopular opinion. I'm going to go with a Nick Bosa or a great pass rusher in the draft. I think you got to go with more of a safe pick. What we hear in NFL circles is they keep saying Kyler Murray. But we see that they drafted Josh Rosen last year, and they haven't really given him a shot. How do you feel about that? Like, should Rosen get another chance?
I mean, personally, are you asking me, like, who do I think they should pick? All right, ladies and gentlemen, you ready for this? We're getting a little business lesson here. It's called sunk cost. You ever heard it? We're gonna learn you some knowledge today. Sunk cost. It's called cost that has already been incurred and that cannot be recovered. So last year, Arizona, as you probably knew, they traded a second, and a third, and a fourth with the Niners to go up and get Rosen. Now, that was last year. They already traded up. They already risked all that capital. There's nothing they can do about it now. I know a lot of the people out there that say, you know what, Rosen, they've put too much in, they've invested too much in him. They can't leave him now. I'm calling BS on that. It doesn't matter. Last year doesn't matter. This is a new year. They have Cliff Kingsbury coming in hot, and I mean hot. He's, a lot of people think
he's a fox.
He's a fox.
He got the job because he's good looking. If people don't think that happens in today's world, it's clearly wrong.
But he's going to light up the offense, and Josh Rosen is not going to be able to do it for them. Arizona is going to want to have an air-out attack. They're going to have an athlete throwing the ball, and I think there's no better choice at number 1 than getting Kyler Murray. I think he's going to be electric. I think he's going to set the NFL on fire, similar to how Mahomes did. I think that's going to be a surefire number 1 pick.
It's a copycat league. A lot of people do the same thing. You have Sean McVay coming in L.A., hot, young, smart coach. What does the Green Bay do? They went out and got a young coach. What does the Bengals do? They got a young coach. What did Arizona do? They got a young coach. So it's a copycat league. So we see Mahomes lighting up the NFL, getting MVP last year, and so they're going to say, hey, let's copy this. Murray is that type of guy that's like Mahomes, where he can sling it, he's accurate, and he's quick. My dilemma is, just because it's a copycat league doesn't mean that you just have to follow suit with whatever's hot right now. I personally think you keep Rosen. You try to trade back if you can trade back. If you can't, you take Nick Bosa, almost a surefire bet as a pass rusher, and you begin to accumulate good, solid players, blue-chip players. I think if you get Kyler Murray, you're going to have to trade Rosen. Best you could probably get, what we're hearing, is third-round pick at most. I just don't think that when we're looking at sunk cost, that's worth it. I think you just ride Rosen out a little bit and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, personally, some people like to think Josh Rosen is like a new car. It's one of those things that has great value, but as soon as you drive it off the lot, that value absolutely plummets. So, trying to trade Rosen now, the value he might have, second or third round pick after just spending a first rounder and then some change with the draft picks you took, it's going to be a hot price to try and get him out of Arizona. They're going to want to do an air attack with Kyler Murray. That's at least the reports. Some people think they're just fluff. They're just trying to get people to trade up. But I mean, who knows? It's the draft. You really
Chris, I got a question for you.
Yep, hit me.
Let's say they take Kyler Murray.
All right.
If you're an outside team looking at Arizona, what team should go for Rosen?
I don't know. I mean, your first thought has to be either A, Washington.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly they need a quarterback.
Desperate.
And then maybe Miami. They did just get Fitzpatrick. He had a couple good games with Tampa Bay, but nothing that's really gonna get you over the hump. I mean, personally, I think Miami's probably the best bet for that. Some people are saying maybe tank for Tua type deal. Really go for that 2020 draft, get Tua on the board. But I don't know. I'm thinking either Washington or Miami. Are you thinking kind of
Washington's in an interesting spot because you have Jay Gruden trying to keep his job, and he's been just good enough to not get a great draft pick and just bad enough not to get in the playoffs or go far in the playoffs or any opportunity in the playoffs. Even if they snuck in last year, they had no chance without Alex Smith being 100% healthy. And so he's in a spot where he's just trying the Band-Aid game, and that's the issue is the NFL, the coaches are looking at their jobs, the GMs are looking at their jobs, and the owners are looking at the long term. And so we're looking at short-term return on investment by coach and GM versus long-term return on investment by a fan or an owner. And that's the issue that Washington's dealing with is Jay's trying to keep his job. That's why you get a Case Keenum. That's why you get an Alex Smith. They've been in the league. They understand offenses. They understand schemes. And they're going to give you an 8-8 kind of caliber season depending on how your defense and running game plays. So they're kind of in a stuck position. I think they take the risk. If they can get Rosen for a 3, I think that's great value. And I'm a big fan of Rosen. I think he's extremely smart. He was my favorite quarterback coming out from last year. I'm going to stick with that. He's just not in the right team, and the offensive line play by Arizona really messed them up.
Yeah, and I think that was a big thing last year. Their line play was just atrocious. They did, granted, have a lot of injuries. They should get some of those guys back. So if they did go ahead and get a guy like Kyler, they would have more kind of protection than Rosen did. Just an interesting stat. I just want to toss it out there just, for the waves. Last year, Josh Rosen, according to a Reddit post, that's where you get all great information.
All great news from It's like Wikipedia.
He was sacked 17 times in less than 2.5 seconds. Now that's, a 5-step drop. That's got to be around, you can't even get a 5-step drop in 2.5 seconds. So to give up on Rosen that quick, it's going to be tough, but they have a new coach. They're overhauling everything. Something's got to change, right?
Absolutely. And so if they draft Kyler Murray, I think Kyler's going to have a better opportunity. The line will be healthier. They're probably going to bring in some late free agent ads, late draft ads to help that staff. But if you want to look at how bad the offensive line play was, look at David Johnson's numbers. Extremely down. If you're a fantasy player out there, he was a top 5 pick in most drafts last year. Did not play top 5 caliber numbers, and it really messed some people up. He scored early on, but if he wasn't scoring touchdowns, he didn't have the yardage, which was a reflection on the line play. So everyone's affected on that, not just Josh Rosen.
Yeah, I agree. Well, enough about the Cardinals. They're probably going to be terrible again this year.
Yeah, let's talk draft a little bit.
Let's get in more of the draft. So, I guess the big thing every year is, who's going to go number 1, who's going to go number 2, blah, blah, blah. But in terms of late round, that Saturday afternoon, it's the 5th round.
No one's watching.
6th round.
No one's
Who's watching? Only the diehard fans are watching. John, who are you taking on that 3rd day?
Now, I'm a little biased. Had a couple friends play at Clemson University. Go Tigers. So I'm going to take one of their products. I'm going to go with Hunter Renfrow, the wide receiver, originally a walk-on with Clemson Tigers. He's put up incredible numbers. He's put up incredible numbers against Alabama on the biggest stages. He won the national championship by getting the game-winning touchdown to beat Alabama a few years back. He's just a winner. He knows where to be. I see him going 6th, 7th round, probably to a team like New England, who always takes that receiver and turns him into a superstar. Big fan on Hunter Renfrow. Look out for him. He won't be a flashy signing. He won't be a flashy draft pick. But I see him doing big things 3-4 years down the line. A couple touchdowns, a couple move the chains, kind of catches, just helping his team get first downs.
Yeah, and it pains me to hear, as a South Carolina grad, any of those Clemson guys, you just hate to see them do well. As bad as it sounds, it's the rivalry just goes way back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We've gotten beat down the last couple of years. It's been bad. So to kind of counter that, I have to name a South Carolina boy as kind of my sleeper. Contrary to some of the scouts out there saying he's not the best route runner, saying he's not all that. But I'm going to throw out my boy Deebo Samuel. I'm going to stick with the wide receiver trend
Okay,
here,
all
going
right.
for sleepers.
Mhm.
Deebo Samuel, probably in the 3rd round-ish, is where they're projecting him now. But this guy is electric. I'll say that. He is unbelievable. Get that man the ball. He finds a way to change the game. I'll tell you what. Any time he's on kick return, punt return, watch out. He's like, I'd say I wouldn't compare him exactly to Devin Hester back in the day on kickoffs, but he has that same type of electric feel when he gets the ball. Everyone kind of stands up in their feet. And not to mention, his stats at wide receiver. His sophomore year, he did 59 catches, almost 800 yards, and 7 total touchdowns. His last year at South Carolina, his senior year, 62 receptions, almost 900 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And on top of all that, 4 career kickoff and punt returns. This guy, watch out for him maybe the 2nd day, maybe creeping into the 3rd day. He's one of those guys that can really do damage and hopefully, can be a great addition to any team.
Mm-hmm. When I look at players in college, you actually got to look a lot at their touchdowns. I find that touchdowns really separate good college players from great college players, good NFL players from great NFL players. The college players that can find the end zone tend to separate themselves more. So I really like that pick. I think there's a lot of explosiveness there. Obviously, I've scored a lot of touchdowns in college, and just a lot of upside for a guy who can find the ball. So let's talk about the receiver that everyone wants to talk about, Metcalf. Big boy. How do you feel about him?
DK. Let's see. Let's be honest. He was a combine freak.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you may or may not have saw the pic of him in the gym, just absolutely flexing on everybody.
Shredded.
He looked. When you're talking about comparables in the draft, you like to say, okay, this guy plays like Julio Jones. He plays like this. He plays like X. I'm gonna throw out the Aaron Donald comp. This guy just chiseled. You saw his abs.
Absolutely.
Put him next to the picture of Aaron Donald. they look like twins out there. And DK's a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is unbelievable in terms of size, in terms of how he looks in shorts at the combine.
Beautiful man.
John, let me ask you a question. When they're out there on the football field, do they play in shorts?
No, sir.
They play in full pads, ladies and gentlemen.
Breaking
pads. News, the combine doesn't mean anything.
Nope.
We're here to tell you that the combine means nothing.
Mm-mm. Coach, a friend of mine, coach for the Los Angeles Chargers, said that the combine is 10% of what the Chargers staff looks at during a draft synopsis. And so when you look at a DK Metcalf that runs a 4.33 40, has 27 bench press reps, just an absolute horse and a monster, they don't really see winning in the combine as winning on the field. If you look up the top 10 combine times of all time, Bo Jackson was unofficial, so we're not going to count him. There are very few players that you say, I recognize that name, and they were big contributors. Chris Johnson comes to mind, and he was probably one of the biggest contributors in that top 10 list. But speed doesn't actually end up in results. And so I think people overlook that. I think people are overlooking his size. And we look at production in college, and he was an injury-prone guy. So how does that translate to the NFL?
And can you even make the argument that he was the best receiver on that Ole Miss football team?
I would not. I think A.J. Brown is.
A.J. Brown had a great year. He put up more yards than DK. He put up more receptions, more yards per game. The only thing that DK really had on him was touchdowns. Mm-hmm. And being a red zone threat, that's going to come with it. Mm-hmm. But to not even be the best wide receiver on your team, it's hard to make a case when a guy kind of jumps out like that at the combine, kind of last second out of nowhere. It kind of raises some red flags as, okay, well, we saw he did well in the combine, but let's go back and look at his college tape, and was he really all that? And, he was okay at Ole Miss. He didn't have a great quarterback there, but still, you'd like to see some more production than what he had. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of worrisome to see that a guy pop out that last second in the combine to just all of a sudden, he's a top 10 pick. When in college, we just didn't see that production.
Absolutely. And I think production is what most scouts are looking for, most coaches are looking for. What does the tape say? Is he making separation? Is he making route running? Is he getting open for balls? And is he staying healthy on the field? And if you look at Metcalf, he's not doing those things. Yes, he scored, but a lot of those were just physical toss-up plays that won't work as easily in the NFL. and production-wise, they let a lot more go in the NFL when you're talking about pushing and grabbing for a position. So I don't see him as a electric player. I think he could be a good player going to the right team.
Now, when you say right team, like where do you see him going? Do you see him going mid-first, late-first? Do you even see him going?
So I see a team taking him early and stretching on him. Maybe top 10, furthest top 15. Where I think he should go is 30th pick on, maybe 25th pick on. And you got to look at a team that kind of needs a second receiver, not really a first receiver.
I mean, do you think he can be a number one receiver? Do you think he can be the guy that can win you
with
games?
The right lineup and the right quarterback, he could. You look at a place like Atlanta, and we're going to see a guy like Calvin Ridley thrive because the Julio Jones is already there. It's established. But if we put him on a team like Baltimore, where he would have to be the true number one, I see him struggling.
Now you bring up Baltimore. That's a good point that you bring that up because that is an interesting scenario with Lamar now starting. Now, even though he may be the number one receiver and he might not succeed normally being the number one receiver, do you see them as being a more run-first team, that his kind of blocking ability could maybe make it a viable option for the Ravens?
Yeah, a lot of mocks, if you look online right now, currently have Metcalf going to the Ravens. I think they see that run-heavy offense and his size as a great run blocker. I could see him thriving in Baltimore just because of the run game, which sets up a longer play action. Most people play zone against Lamar, so if he gets a little bit of time, a guy can break wide open in the zone depending on how Lamar's scrambling. Lamar likes to throw down the middle of the field, and if you look at the tape from last year, he liked to throw to his tight ends down the middle of the field and Willie Snead down the middle of the field. And so he's not that inaccurate when it comes down to the middle of the field. So it's, can Metcalf run those routes, or do they need to go with a smaller type, quicker receiver that can go over the middle quickly without getting jacked up? That is the question. Where do you see him going?
Yeah, I think that'll be kind of the interesting point of the draft. I think Kyler Murray and DK is going to be kind of the two, I guess, the big focuses on draft days. Just kind of see where they land because a lot of people have them in a lot of different areas. I've seen DK as high as 5. I've seen him as low back as late first, early second. So I personally think he'll be drafted late in the first. He just doesn't have that production that we saw that you want to see out of college. But I think, it's funny you bring up the Ravens. I think he would be a good fit for Baltimore just because of his size and how much we're going to be running. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, and I think it'll be an interesting draft day nonetheless. But
last question on this.
Okay, yeah.
A.J. Brown or DK Metcalf? Who would you prefer on your team?
I'd have to go with A.J. Brown. He's more of a solid receiver. He might not flash as much blocking as DK does, but when you're looking at true receiver, I think you got to go with A.J.
Absolutely, and I think if you look at the attributes of a receiver, their blocking ability should be 5, 6, 7 down the line. Yeah. Catching, route running, speed, all of that kind of tops the charts in that. Yeah. So as we look at kind of forming teams, kind of the two takes of the NFL right now is the traditional model, and we'll say the New England model, where you don't sign guys to long-term deals, you don't pass out a lot of guaranteed money, and you keep your draft picks and you accumulate draft picks. And so they like to say, we have a quarterback established and we're just going to build around him in the draft to keep everything cheap, don't get locked into contracts. And so we've seen this sustainable model for them. But then we also have the Los Angeles Rams model right now, which is we have a quarterback on a rookie deal, and so we're going to spend while we can to hopefully set up a championship in the next 2 to 3 years. And as we look at the cap space of the Los Angeles Rams next year in 2020, after this upcoming 2019 season, we see that Aaron Donald takes up 9% of their cap, which is a huge hit, followed with Brandon Cooks and other players there. So they're going to be in salary cap trouble in a couple of years where they have to sign Goff because they already have Donald under contract, Todd Gurley under contract, and Brandon Cooks under contract. And then if you look at the 2020 salary cap of the New England Patriots, there's actually not even close to a full roster because a lot of their contracts are short, they're not guaranteed. And so we have two models, and we understand that Tom Brady is Tom Brady, and that brings a lot of championships. But let's take Tom Brady out of the equation, and they have just kind of an average or above average quarterback. what model is the better way to go in today's NFL?
Well, I mean, there's no easy answer with that because whenever you're talking the Patriots, I mean, you got freaking Tom Brady as your quarterback. I mean, come on, this dude has made enough money. He's got Giselle as his wife.
Winner.
This man isn't exactly taking up a big piece of the cap, I'll tell you what.
Big W.
So, having the ability to have a guy like Tom Brady and year over year take pay cuts, I mean, it's kind of an interesting variable to take out.
Absolutely.
So, as far as team building, Patriots obviously through the draft. That's all they do. Bill Belichick is out there wheeling and dealing for picks. They got 12 picks this year in the draft. And it seems like every year they have 12 picks. When you look on the other side of the table, the Rams, they got 7 picks this year in the draft. They have a first. They don't have a second. They have a couple thirds. But then you look at their salary cap. It's, like you said, it's 2020, 2021. It's going to be unbelievable hits for them. But the thing you got to love about the Rams is they're in that win-now mentality. They got Goff on his rookie deal. They're going to pick up his 5th-year option next year. It is going to be spend, spend, spend until you can win, win, win.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just what it's going to have to be because there really is no other scenario where you can just have Tom Brady taking pay cuts all day because that's who's going to take up most of your cap. So, you want to say, okay, yeah, build from the draft, but you get a good quarterback, he's cheap, might as well build around him, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And we look at draft capital, and I think people are kind of misvaluing draft picks these days. I think a guy like Odell Beckham was worth way more than a first and a third, and you could argue that Jabril Peppers was a former first-round pick who was relatively productive, and so you could argue it was 2 firsts and a third, but I think Jabril Peppers' production was underperforming compared to his draft prowess. And so a guy like Odell gets traded to Cleveland. Cleveland gives up a couple picks, but I think they win big time in the steal, assuming Odell stays healthy. I think it's an absolute steal. I think GMs are a little bit prideful in the NFL, and they think that they can turn picks, any pick, into the next player. There was an article with the Steelers GM talking about how you have to be careful about trading away late-round picks because they can turn into the Antonio Browns. Oh. They can turn into the Tom Bradys. But those statistically are so few and far between. I think you have to be really careful about that. I'm a fan of the Rams strategy. I'm a fan of them not buying too much into the first and second round picks. Hey, your goal is to win a Super Bowl. If you win one Super Bowl because you had a stacked team, that's great. Even if your team begins to struggle a couple years after you've accomplished the goal. Yeah. I would rather go all in and win one than go 90% in, barely come up short, and always get close but no cigar. I like their all-in mentality. Yeah. I like their idea of, hey, we're going to do it right here. And like you said, you don't always get a Tom Brady. And if you take Tom Brady out of the equation, I still think New England's very good. I think Belichick's the best coach of all time. So I see a lot of upside with that. But Tom Brady is the variable. If you look at other teams that have a lot of draft capital, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, they have won a couple Super Bowls, but was it sustainable? You see Pittsburgh struggling. Baltimore's in the new era. They have not been the same team since that 2012 Super Bowl season.
I mean, really, since they signed Flacco to that huge deal, I mean, they really never came back from that.
Yep.
So it seems like that's kind of where the league is going, is draft your quarterback, young, get him on his rookie deal. Mm-hmm. Similar to what the Browns are doing. They're trying to trade for pieces now. Mm-hmm. And then while he's on the rookie deal, you're just going to load up on talent and go from there. And we haven't seen, outside of Tom Brady, obviously, who's a variable, that's been the formula with Carson Wentz in Philly, with, obviously Goff now in the Rams. I mean, that seems like that's the way the league's going.
Yeah, and we have Mahomes, and we see a big signing by Tyrann Mathieu. They don't want to wait around for Barry to get healthy, so they get rid of him. And they're gonna spend on defense a little bit and try to make something happen. Obviously, they got rid of Dee Ford, and they had to get rid of Justin Houston because their salary cap, a lot of it's in the offense. But I think these next couple of years, they put in on the defense and say, Mahomes, you had pieces. Now we're just gonna try to outsmart teams.
No, but so we were talking about GMs. So speaking of kind of out there GMs, we got John Gruden out in Oakland, right?
Absolutely.
So this guy Chucky just comes in straight out of the Monday night booth. He's out here wheeling and dealing all his talent. Is John Gruden an idiot or what?
I think we got to judge him on this draft. I mean, at the end of the day, Mike Mayock and him paired up to get Antonio Brown for a 3rd and 5th. low risk, high reward pick. I think Antonio Brown is a brat. I think he is a little bit of a whiner, but I also think he can be very productive. If they don't start winning games early, I think people start losing belief in John Gruden. We saw a little bit of that last year. But I think if they hit on these 2 picks, probably defensively in the first round this year, 3 picks, I believe. 3 picks in the first round.
Yep.
I think that could turn the whole thing around. But if John Gruden misses on this, people are going to think he's an idiot for not keeping Khalil Mack.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. We saw back in August, back in September, when Khalil was shipped out of there, John Gruden came in. He's like, we're not paying these guys. Then goes, I guess near the, start of October, November, trades Amari Cooper. Everybody's like, what is going on with the Raiders? Now you look at it, he doesn't seem like totally, this crazy guy that everyone's making him out to be. Amari Cooper just didn't fit in their system. He wasn't successful there. We saw him go to the Cowboys, clearly a much better player because he fit in their system better. Khalil Mack, sometimes that type of guy, they didn't want to take on that big contract. They didn't want to have that right off the bat. And just a report came in today or a couple of days ago at the owners' meeting, actually. John Gruden said he actually cried for 3 days straight right after they traded Khalil Mack because I guess he liked him that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Khalil Mack arguably is the best defensive player in the league, or up there at least. So you get rid of a pass rusher, a proven pass rusher, it's going to hurt. But they also have 2 first-round picks to work with, and if they can turn them in to half the player that Khalil Mack was at 2 different positions, I think they might be in better shape. But it's really putting all the chips on the table for this draft.
Yeah, and with those 2 extra picks, they can definitely do a lot with that. But also Gruden said, at the owners' meeting as well, that he said, without, shipping Khalil Mack off, they wouldn't have been able to afford Antonio Brown. They just signed Trent Brown, the OT from the tackle from the Patriots, and they got LaMarcus Joyner, their safety from the Rams. So some of those guys are trying to fill in the gaps, and I kind of see where Gruden's going. I can't hate him on him that much. I loved him in the booth up there. Some people hated him. I was a big fan. So at first he came off as kind of what is this dude doing? He's stuck in 2001. This guy's a clown, but. He's making some magic of it, so I know it's going to be just wait and see until what he can do with the draft this year.
What I do love about John Gruden is that he's looking at the long term, and he has the safety of his job to look at the long term.
I mean,
he
wouldn't you love a 10-year, $10 million contract?
10-year, $100 million. Yeah,
absolutely.
Right? I'm hoping my job pays me that tomorrow. We'll see. I'm going to propose it. But it's all guaranteed, too, for coaches. So what I would look at is, all right, you have L.A., Phillip Rivers, he's getting older. He's not going to play at this lights-out level for 5 more years. You have Patrick Mahomes going into his 3rd year now. In 2 more years, they're going to have to pay him. Gruden's kind of playing a slow play game where let's wait till Phillip Rivers retires. Let's wait till Mahomes has to get paid and the salary cap locks up for Kansas City and L.A., and then they can come with their younger players who have a couple years on a rookie deal and make something happen in that time. So if you look at it long term, they can punt this year away too and look at next year, and then they're going to be competitive with L.A. and Kansas City if they hit on their draft picks.
Yeah, I mean, that's just going to be the question, and that's really the age-old question. Can you hit on your draft picks, and can you get lucky, sort of how like the Seahawks did, kind of in their championship run? Can you get a Russell Wilson late in the draft? Can you get, Bobby Wagner late in the draft?
Richard Sherman.
I mean, it's really just a hit-or-miss league, and sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't, and that determines whether you keep your job or, you're out on the street like us boys.
Absolutely.
All right, so I guess transitioning into probably one of my favorite topics.
One of your favorite people of all time.
Favorite person.
Wow.
Money Manziel. Ladies and gentlemen.
Johnny. Here comes Johnny.
Johnny Manziel is back. He's back.
He's home.
I'll tell you what, he's not really better than ever, but he's back nonetheless. He's playing for the Memphis Express in the AAF. No one watches it. It's okay. I'm watching it because Johnny Manziel's playing. His first start this past Sunday, 3 for 5, 48 yards. I'll tell you what, he was electric out there.
Electric.
He was unbelievable. His first play, takes a read option, fools the DN, takes it 20 yards. This man has got his magic back. He's out there talking trash to the other team. They got him mic'd up. It is just unbelievable. It's going to be a spectacle this year. I really hope he gets some more playing time, and And I don't know. I'd want to see him back in the NFL. I feel like he kind of wasted what he had, but I don't know, John. Do you think there's any chance that he gets back in the league?
I don't think GMs can trust him. No one wants to put their name behind that decision. Cleveland already regrets that very much so. Johnny, definitely an electric player, a guy who kind of has a Baker Mayfield mentality, not necessarily a skill comparison, but I'm better than you. I'm going to assert my will on you. I like his mentality on the football field. I just think he struggles off the football field, and he's turning more into a keeping up with the Kardashian kind of guy more than an NFL player. So I see him in this league for a couple years until he makes another mistake, unfortunately.
I don't know. As a Johnny fan, I was there in the A&M days. I'll still be supporting him now. I want to see him back in the league. Do I think he's going to be there? Probably not. He was terrible in Canada. He's throwing picks left and right. It's yet to see what he's going to do in the AAF, if he even gets to start. But you at least got to applaud him for just loving the game and keeping at it. A lot of people would have just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm not in the league. Nobody wants me. But he's playing in the AAF. He's, giving it all he can every week. So, I can only hope the best for him.
And speaking of chances and taking chances, nothing's more wild than March Madness. We have a couple rounds left in March Madness. Chris, I'm assuming your bracket's already busted, but who do you have winning it all?
Well, it's a good question. I'd like to think we're going to talk about all sports here on Backyard Trash Talk. We're going to try to, touch all the bases per se. But, as far as brackets, it's really hard to hate on Duke. They had... they did have a closer game against UCF. If you didn't see this past weekend, Taco Fall, the 7'6"
top 40 tallest people in the world.
He was unbelievable, and Zion looked like a midget next to this guy.
Tiny boy.
Did he not look like a little kid next to Taco?
Yeah.
Zion
looked my size.
It was unbelievable, but
small.
The way that Duke played, and it's crazy. They have all these freshmen. They've been doing it every year. Freshmen. Sometimes they have the older guys, but with these freshmen this year. They're all going to be top 10 picks. At least 3 of them. I think Cam Reddish is going to be a top 10 pick. I think he'll fall in that top 10. But to have that kind of talent and then to go out and to perform and deliver in the clutch, like Zion did on that last play, it's really going to be hard to bet against them going from here on out. They just have shown they've been up, they've been down, they've been without Zion, they've been with Zion. So that's my bet for the rest of the tournament, and that's the easy way out. But, it's really hard to bet against Duke at this point.
Absolutely. I think Duke is the best team in the tournament. However, I don't see them winning it all. When someone gets to play a Duke with the notoriety of having 3 potential top 10 picks in the NBA draft, it's a championship game for anyone. They're going to give people their best shot. And so I see a lot of teams making that their championship, and I see them going out in one of the next couple rounds. A team I like is Kentucky. Why I like Kentucky is they're kind of used to this young model and kind of just run and gun them and then change them out. John Calipari, they're not getting the notoriety they're used to. They're not a 1 seed. They're a 2 seed. I don't hear them getting talked about nearly as much, and I think this is a benefit for their young players. They can stay under the radar. They're playing well, and as some would like to say, when you want to really know what's going on, you check the Vegas odds, and at the beginning of the tournament, they had Kentucky as the second best chance to win behind Duke, so I like them. I'm going to follow that, and just getting players back and healthy after the second round was huge for them. I like Kentucky moving forward.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting pick. You really have to watch out for P.J. Washington. He's probably one of their best players. He was out the first 2 games. Calipari still isn't sure if he's going to play in the next game. But you got to think, even as a 2 seed, they are under the radar, like you said. And the last time they were this under the radar was back when they were an 8 seed and they played UConn in the national championship. They ended up losing, but they still,
they thrive under the radar.
They were a great team. They had great players. That was back when they had the Harrison twins back in the day. But they do thrive on the radar, and that is definitely an interesting pick. I think another team to watch out for, as hard as it is to pick them, just because of how disappointing they were in the tournament last year, Virginia. Got to talk about the Cavaliers because they beat our local team. They got beat by our local team, UMBC, last year.
Go Retrievers, rough.
They actually got smoked last year. They lost by 20.
Crushed.
And it was, unbelievable. And everyone this year is saying, no, can't pick Virginia, can't trust them. They're like that ex who just keeps, breaking your heart over and over. Can't trust them. But They're good. I mean, they shoot the ball, they score. They got Kyle Guy. He is unbelievable. They have, I mean, great defense year in, year out. They first game of the tournament, they were down at halftime. Everybody's going to say, are they going to do this again?
Mm-hmm.
They came out the next 3 halves, in the second round too, and blew the lights off the other team. So that's definitely a team to look out for. Even as a number 1 seed, not technically under the radar, but a lot of people kind of having different thoughts about them. But I think they can make a run down the stretch.
Absolutely, and Tony Bennett's an incredible coach. I hope they can get that burden off their chest a little bit. I think after the first 2 rounds of them still being in the tournament, people are going to kind of breathe a little bit, and the pressure's off of them. They've gone pretty far in the tournament. They wouldn't be a big bust now. Wouldn't be a huge upset at this point.
Yeah.
So they did what they had to do to get that kind of chip off their shoulder, and I see them doing pretty well in the tournament.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, John, it's been a pleasure, and thanks for everybody for tuning in for our first Backyard Trash Talk show. We hope you come back and come back for more. And if you have any comments, suggestions, anything to help us out, we'd really appreciate it.
Comment questions, comment thoughts about Josh Rosen, the picks, Arizona, whatever you want. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.